in my opinion, on the question of the Americans facing the challenges and opportunities of a resurgent China, resurgent isn't a word that I would use. I would say a revived China, a China that as little as at the turn of the 18th to the 19th century, was among the more powerful, wealthy, and sophisticated civilizations on Earth. Today it is taking a rather natural, in historical terms, position in the world, and a challenge for other powers, such as the United States, is how to interact with a place that is a center of entrepreneurialism, a center of global trade, and also a growing military presence. If you look at the history of U.S. China relations going back to the late 18th and early 19th century, they're rooted primarily in trade and in exchange. The strategic nature of the Chinese-American relationship really became apparent in a large way only in the Second World War, when we fought as allies against the Japanese Empire in East Asia. Since then, we have fought sadly and tragically against each other in Korea, a lesson that ought to be a sobering lesson for the leaders of both countries, because it was extraordinarily costly to both countries. And since the late 1970s, we have both prospered very significantly from the longest period of peace in East Asia since the Opium War. And it is the maintenance of that peace which is the greatest and most important challenge for both China and the United States, because anything that endangers that peace easily and first and foremost endangers the prosperity that China has enjoyed in large part as a result of that peace, but endangers the rest of East Asia and the global economy at the same time. But I wouldn't use the word dominate, because if you're dominating, you're actually losing. If you're leading, and you're leading in a way that others can follow, then arguably you are winning. You want to be a place whose values are shared willingly by others. That was certainly true at the height of the greatest Chinese empires, where the value emanating from China spread to Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and beyond willingly, not by imposition. China then, Chinese civilization at least, had very significant soft power. I think the greatest challenge for China is to set out standards that are not just the absolute best in the world. Certainly you can do that in matters technological and otherwise, but in terms of governance, in terms of principles of civilization that others will willingly follow. Right now, there's a lot of talk of a China model, but there's almost no articulation of what that model is. In Chinese, people say that it is socialism with Chinese characteristics. 中国特色的社会主义. Well, that 特色 means that it's just for China. It's not for anybody else, and it's not seeking to export that model. When we say at the end of our book, Can China Lead? Will the 21st century, or can the 21st century be the Chinese century? Our answer is yes, of course it can be the Chinese century, but not alone. One can lead in partnership, one can lead in example, and one can lead by setting out standards that others quite happily adopt for themselves. That's a huge challenge for any country, and it is a huge challenge for contemporary China. think the advice, not that just that I would give, but the people who would be much better positioned than I to be in that position would be clarity and honesty in communication, setting out areas and trying to strengthen areas of our mutual interest and our shared interest. The United States and China, for example, on at least one critical strategic issue, the Iranian nuclear deal, were on one page and should have been on one page. The Americans undid that. So to be clear, to be predictable, to begin some confidence building measures, for example, to reopen that consulate in Houston, which in my view was closed for no particularly strong reason. There are many other ways of dealing with the issues that were reported regarding that consulate, and to try to achieve some stable relations and predictable relations, to continue to support economic and cultural exchange, and to be strong in disagreement where the two countries will disagree. There are issues of at least American and European perspective of human rights. Issues regarding Tibet and Xinjiang are not going to go away. So one can imagine continuing discussion and difficulties over a number of issues at the same time by trying to build stronger relations on those things that matter most to both countries for their economies and their securities, and that matter also to the rest of the world. There are many, many other issues, but clarity, continuity, competence, that's what's needed.